In the original text, it's on the first page of chapter 13, which is on page 8 Yud Ches in the text, in the English translated text. It starts from the word Ach me'achar shehara. So we were discussing the Maimer Azal about the Beinanim of Zevaz Shefton. We explained in length the beautiful diuk. How the Alter Rebbe points out over here that the expression of the Chazal is not Meishlam but Shefton, dealing with the Nefesh Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara. It does have a say, but Chas v'Shalom, does it ever, the opinion of the Yetzer Hara is never implemented, never unfolds, never becomes realized, and it never manifests, because it works like a Bezdin, that eventually Hashem, which is a third party, kicks in based on the person's firm decision. Just to make no mistake, Hashem is not the one who makes the decision for us. We have our Bechira Chofshis, our freedom of choice, but when the Eibishter Hashem sees that we truly made the decision not to accept that inappropriate thought, again, maybe speech or action, but we're dealing with the more sensitive part dimension of the struggle in the life of the Beinani, which is more hirhur, thought. So Hashem sees that the person made a very honest, if you remember, we pointed out in the previous chapter the expression of the Alter Rebbe in the chapter Yud BAYT, 11th to 12th chapter, b'shtei yadayim, with two hands, not chas v'shalom. A little bit, he says, I'll allow it to enter in one hand, I'll push it away, because don't want to do officially, formally the wrong thing. But on the other hand, he accepts it even a bit. But Hashem, which is Bochen Klayes Valev, which examines the person at the time of the struggle, and he realizes the person made a true and firm and determined decision, to push away this thought with both hands. And then Hashem will be the third judge, which will kick in and give the additional dosage of energy to overcome, to save it from the negative energy of the Yetzer Hara, which in other words, to override that which Yetzer Hara has to suggest. The signal the Yetzer Hara is sent from the heart to the mind. And again, it applies to speech and action, on the negative side, and the Surmeirah, and on the Asay Tov. But again, we just point out over here something which is, as we mentioned just before, but this also works on the Asay Tov, to make sure that our thought, even our thoughts, are constantly aligned with the Ratzon Hashem, may it be in the negative, may it be in the positive. We continue the text. In the end of the day, being that the evil which exists within the left side of the heart, which is again the Nefesh of Avraham Baya Beinani, remains with its determination and strength, Kitul Dosei, the way it was born. Could you imagine you're dealing with a Beinani, which never transgress, never will transgress, yet the negative, the Yetzer Hara, is equally potent the way it was in the very beginning the person was born. The innate energy which Yetzer Hara has remains, and the Yisav Taiva l'chol tanug elam haza, to have a taiva, to have a temptation to any worldly pleasure, and the chol, he says, to any worldly pleasure. It would never annul itself, which means it never became annulled, rather, even in minimally, in the face of the good and the holy. It was never pushed away from its place at all. It never budged. So, to point out something in the previous class, is this encouraging or discouraging? But on the surface, this is extremely discouraging. A person's Eved Hashem, year after year, decade after decade, make sure that his thought, action, speech, and even thought are 100% aligned with Ratzon Hashem. May it be in the mitzvahs leisase and in mitzvahs say, in the negative and in the positive. Yet he is told that your nefesh of ahamis, your Yetzer Hara, has not budged, has not weakened, and it remains with the same strength as the way you were born, in the innate strength, the way it came in invested into your body. So on the surface, it's extremely discouraging. But as we mentioned in the past, because this is a reality, it is extremely encouraging. For the worst case scenario, or the worst struggle man has when he is struggling something which is not a reality, or something which he believes is a reality, but the case is not so. It is not a true reality, because that confusion, that ambiguity which he deals with is something more painful, and the blurry scenario, something which is not a fact and untrue. That is the worst struggle man has in his avodas Hashem, and everything else for that matter. Because when you're dealing with, even in worldly affairs and business affairs, you pinpoint the issue, the problem, and then you're able to tackle it. Because if you don't have the problem as it is, and you're trying to tackle something which is not the case and not the truth, you're not getting anywhere. It makes things much more tangled, and it's difficult to deal with this reality. When you look in hindsight and you see it wasn't the facts weren't true, hence we were tackling and dealing with something which does not even begin to have any basis. So even the problem seems to be great, and again, in every matter in life, when you pinpoint it, even once you pinpoint the truth of it, you realize this is an enormous problem, but the virtue of it is that now you're dealing with the truth, and therefore you can tackle it accordingly, and your chances and the percentage of winning are very high, and especially in this case with avodas Hashem, and Hashem definitely says, Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'Betrunim b'Yoseph. Hashem asks from the person based on his ability, the person's ability, not Hashem's ability. Yet even though Ilmala Kadosh Baruch Hu Hashem always assists the Yid, like we learned again in the previous class, to help him, but in the same token, it's ultimately the Yid's struggle and the Yid freedom of choice, and the Yid has the ability to overcome all these struggles and obstacles in his avodas Hashem, and he's guaranteed that he's going to win, even though it's a milchama, it's a war, it's a struggle, it's a challenge. But the beauty of these words of the Alter Rebbe, how he sets clarity, certainly on the surface is very discouraging. That the beauty of it is so that it sets the truth, it sets the clarity and truth of the reality of our struggles in our avodas Hashem. Hence it's extremely rather encouraging once we know that the problem is indeed a problem, and especially the Alter Rebbe illustrates the problem. It seems like an enormous problem, that a person struggles with his avodas Hashem and serves HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He reached the level of being a Beinani, which li'over aveda miyam, but he never sinned and never will sin. And again, year after year, decade after decade, is successful in his avodas Hashem. Yet the Alter Rebbe tells him that your Yetzer Hara, with all its temptations, with all its lusts, is not budged from its place at all, klal, or he says, l'chol tanugim has, it's ready to send a signal to your mind, or to yourself, to your conscious mind, thought, speech, and action, to invest, and more so perhaps even indulge in worldly pleasures which not align with the Ratzon Hashem. So certainly the problem is a big problem, but once we know that this is the emes, and we shouldn't talk ourselves in, and sometimes in a very silly way. I did that davening this morning. I learned so many hours, and I was such a great person in my behavior and in my observance of mitzvahs. I did that very important chesed, or I learned so many hours of Torah straight, and therefore I'm probably holy, and therefore the average struggle of the Yetzer Hara, which belongs to every single person, is not pertinent to me. In the end of the day, it's going to cause more trouble in one's avodas Hashem. He's practically, to say it bluntly, he's lying in his avodas Hashem, and that is indeed the hardest part in our Avodas Hashem is we're not honest with ourselves. And here therefore it is extremely encouraging when we know that this is the reality, that despite it all, the Yetzer Hara remains intact, fully intact, to persuade us to send its signals from heart to our conscious thought, speech, and action, to our conscious mind, again in our thought, speech, and action, in order to get involved in every worldly pleasure. V'leinis batel b'miut, it never even minimized to in no form or fashion. Because as we remember when the Alter Rebbe describes the tzaddik and the many and multiple levels of the tzaddik, it's a matter of bitul b'miut. How much the tzaddik's how much was he mevatel? How much was he enabled to annul his Yetzer Hara in the face of the energy of the Yetzer Tov? But that's already a level of a tzaddik. If he was mevatel it completely, or as we mentioned, there's tens of thousands of level in bittul, as we elaborated on. Once you're dealing with bittul, b'shishim, be'elef, or b'masayim, b'meya, there's tens of thousands of different levels how one thing could be batal l'gabi the other. That's all the life of the tzaddik, the different multiple levels in the tzaddik, again till the quintessential tzaddik, that not only was mevatel, not only annulled in his entire Yetzer Hara as Depesh Bahamis, but more so he transformed it to be an ally, which that's the tzaddik v'tayvlei, which Kodesh Baruch Hu b'tzaddikim shehem mu'atim amad v'shasla m'chol der b'deir, as we learned. But here we're dealing with a Beinani that Elaine is batal b'miyute. Elaine is batal b'miyute even klal, not even a bit, because again, once it's in his battle b'miyut, it became a null, it's already the tzaddik, and here we're dealing with the Beinani, that Leini's battle, when you say Leini's battle was not a null, it means to say the Yetzer Hara stands with the same determination, and the same taivas, the same desires and covetz, etc. We continue the text. Was not pushed away at all. The only thing is, how does he remain online with Ratzon Hashem? Because it doesn't have dominance. It doesn't have that governing force to implement itself, lispashe, to express itself. It would send a signal, but nonetheless, as we learned in the previous chapter and in the beginning of this chapter, how the nefshel kis, it's like and today we have the unfortunately we needed to come to this, but those the counter missiles which we had recently in Eretz Yisrael. Again, I say unfortunately we had to come to this. It never needed to come to this. Had we gone with the derech hayashar, not going into that, and at this time blanks my mind over here. The type of the counter missile, which didn't allow the missile of the enemy to land and have its unfortunate result, tragic unfortunate result, Rahman al-Islan. So the missile of the enemy is sent, but it countered in mid-air, meaning that it chas v'shalom should not come and do damage. Similarly, when we're dealing with the Yetzer Hara, we could picture the Yetzer Hara or the life of the struggle of the Beinani, that the Yetzer Hara sends its signals, and it sends its signals with strength and determination. Yetzer Hara's signals are extremely potent, even in the life of the Beinani. The only thing is, how does he remain a Beinani? Chas v'shalom does not become a Rasha, because the Yetzer Hara the Yetzer Hara is stopped at a certain moment. Ein le shlita, it doesn't have any governing force. It doesn't have any dominance. It doesn't have any rulership to express itself in the limbs of the body, starting from thought, speech, and action. Because Hashem, which stands in the side of the destitute, in this case again, it's not that Hashem makes a choice for us, but when He sees that we make our honest, true, and again, He's a beichin kleis v'lev. Hashem one examines everything. The chas v'shalom, no one should ever get in his avedus, own avedus Hashem. Try to, which again, in this dimension, it's also important to be 100% honest, because we're dealing with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is beichin. He tests and He examines, He knows everything, if and how we're making our true choice. So when He sees we're making a choice to counter that suggestion, that signal of the Nefesh Bahamis, He stands in the right side of the destitute. He helps, and He shines an additional energy to the godly soul, and in order that the Nefesh Bahamis should not implement its signal, which it indeed continues to send into the system of the person, starting from in its thought, speech, and action. So now the Alter Rebbe continues and says, now we can understand why the Beinoni is called Kirosha. At the very beginning of the Alter Rebbe explained, which means that we had the Alter Rebbe even ask the question that how could you say that on the one hand it says that the whole world tells you're a tzaddik, you've been a menacha karosha. In the other hand, in other words, you should be in your eyes like a rosh. And in the other hand, there's a Mishnah which says, in the end of Nida, Gemara Tractate Nida, it says that the neshama is sworn. In other words, it's made to swear to demonstrate an oath. In other words, it is on the time, the very beginning, initial state of its shlichus. It's divine shlichus that it has mandated, it has to, as it comes into the body, to make a Kodesh Baruch Hu a dir b'tachtenim, a dwelling place in this world via learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. In the very initial state, the Gemara says they take the neshama mashbim, they say that it has to sound the oath. That what is the oath they are make the neshama swear is to eat tzaddik, val ti rasha, be a tzaddik and don't be a rasha. And more so, it says that even in the same Gemara it says that even the whole world tells you you're a tzaddik, you should be in your eyes like a rasha. So l'chayra, and also the Alter Rebbe brings, so what is the meaning of the statement? In the one hand it says the mandate is to be a tzaddik, to do the righteous. On the other hand, not to be a rasha. And then the same Gemara says, but if the whole world tells you you should be a tzaddik, you're a tzaddik, in your eyes you should be a kirasha, like a rasha. First of all, what does that mean? And Alter Rebbe brings the contradiction in the very first page again of Tanya. That we have to understand. It says in Perik Av, in the beginning of his Perik Beis, do not be a rasha in your eyes. So how could you tell the Yid that you should be in your eyes like a Rosh? But now the Alter Rebbe explains it based on everything what we learned. It becomes so clear. What is it saying Gemara in the end of the tractate Nida? Kirasha, not a Rasha. Which means a person is never allowed to be a Rasha. Because, and again, what makes him a Rasha when he transgresses even with one Aveda, may it be in action, may it be in speech, even in thought, if one thought is accepted, where a thought which is not aligned with Ratzon Hashem or contrary to what it says in Shulchan Aruch, one is not entertain his mind with, he becomes a Rasha. So a Rasha is never allowed to be. Ti tzadik v'yal tihi Rasha. And v'yal tihi Rasha b'fnei atzmecha. But if kol elam kol emrim lach tzadikata hayei beinecha, there doesn't say Rasha. Don't be in your eyes like a Rasha, because you should never be a Rasha. And be honest with yourself, not a matter of humiliation, or rather humbleness, how a person is going to demonstrate his position in Avodas Hashem to others. We're dealing with the honest position of the Yid, which is serving a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And the Mishnah is telling us that if the whole world is telling you you're a tzaddik, but the Mishnah does not say Rasha, because if you're honored with your Avodas Hashem, you're not supposed to be in your eyes like a Rasha, for you're not supposed to be a Rasha. Chas v'shalom, to want to be a Rasha even one moment, even with an inappropriate thought. So what the Alter Rebbe is medayik, kirasha. The Beinoni, if you think about it, if you want to describe the Beinoni, the perfect description in one word is kirasha. Because if you think about the vulnerability of the life of the Beinoni, and the example which we just said of the missile coming in, how unfortunately in the previous war, not all missiles were countered. Not all missiles were countered, as we all know it. In other words, it's an extremely invulnerable state. Baruch Hashem, they countered so many missiles, the majority of the missiles, and it was extremely effective, this whole program, this counter-missile program. But in the same token, the vulnerability is enormous, is great. And so if you think about the life of the Beinoni, if you put him in that position, that the Yetzer Hara is as potent as it is, the way he was born, and it carries the same innate energy as the first person who ever initiated as Avodas Hashem. This is like on the verge, fringing on the verge of collapse. And collapse is an understatement when you're dealing with chas v'sholem, someone transgressing even the machshavta, even his thought, or even a veda kala medivri seifrim. It's neged Ratzon Hashem, as we learned in the previous chapters. What is it connected to? So the vulnerability is enormous. He's on the verge of gerasha. He needs enormous strength in order chas v'sholem that he should not even transgress even once. You become chas v'sholem a rasha b'poil. which means in actuality, in reality, by accepting even one thought which is not aligned with Ratzon Hashem, with the way Hashem's mandate for the Yid in this world, with Hashem's Torah, with Hashem's Shulchan Aruch, and maybe in speech, not to say one word which is contrary to the Ratzon Hashem, and again in action. So because if his Nefesh Bahamis was minimized, then you could say, well, oh, he's so distant from the level of the Rosh. But if you say that that it stands with the same energy and the same strands, the way he was born, or the way he with the same innateness as his initial state in his Avodas Hashem, so you could understand how, and that's why he's called the Evi, and that's why he's called the destitute. He has the vulnerability of someone who's in destitution. So he's so close to the Rasha. But in the Rasha he's certainly not, because he's the Beinani, which Chas v'Shalom le'aver me'elam, because he's Chas v'Shalom never transgresses, never violated the Ratzon Hashem, not in the past and not in the future. He is the Beinani. So if you want to describe in one word, Kirasha. On the surface, it seems like he's a tzaddik, because as much as someone, a bystander, seeing somebody who everything, his thought, speech, and action are 100% aligned with Ratzon Hashem, what do you instinctively describe this individual? He's a tzaddik. And on the surface, he has so much righteousness to him. He's sitting in Elam Hazeh with all the challenges and obstacles of Elam Hazeh, and le'yover v'le'yaver miyom. He never transgressed. He never will transgress. And it makes so much sense that one would instinctively define him and call him a tzaddik. And this is what the Mishnah says. The whole world is telling you you're a tzaddik. And perhaps rightfully so. But you know deep down, or not even deep down, you're not a Rasha Chas v'Shalom because you never transgress, you're the Beinani. But the Kirosha you definitely are, because the Netzahara, the Nefesh Bahami, is the animal soul. Or the Yetzahara were not nisbatel b'miyutei at all. It was not even annulled in no form or fashion. So you're really right there on the edge. You're next to the cliff by a thread, if you think about it. And as we all know it so well, how we're true evyonim in our struggles in Avodas Hashem. So what are we closer, to the Rasha or to the Tzaddik? Obviously to the Rasha. Because the Tzahara remains with its initial strength and determination, and sends its signals, and on a constant basis, and many times on a millisecond basis. So we have the same challenges as anybody, any Rasha. The only thing is chas v'chalila, to say with that person, and this is what the Mishnah says, al ti Rasha b'fnei atzmacha, because you're a Rasha, you should not be not b'fnei atzmacha. You chas v'shalom should never allow any thought or speech or action. In this case, again, thought where we have our namely our struggle, to enter into our mind deliberately. So chas v'shalom to be a Rasha, but the Kirasha, that is the Beinani. In a one word, the Beinani is Kirasha. The Razal tells our sages, a blessed memory, say that even the whole world tells you you're a tzaddik. In your eyes, you should be the Rasha v'lei Rasha mamash, not chas v'shalom a Rasha mamash. Chas v'chalil, a person should be a Rasha mamash. Again, the description of the Rasha that he's violates, even a machshava once, violates any mitzvah of the Torah. Maybe a deraisa, maybe a derabbanan. This is all again based on the Gemaras, which Alter Rebbe brings on the first page. But namely, as Alter Rebbe explains us, what does it mean, chas v'shalom violating a mitzvah saseh in the Torah, or chas v'shalom violating a mitzvah leisas in the Torah. It may be a deraisa, something which is based in Torah, law command, or even rabbinic command. This is Ratzon Hashem. This is what the Eibishter wants. And again, if it's even a rabbinic command not to do something, in the end of the day, this is where Hashem is standing. He says, I don't want you to do that. I don't want this to be done. So the Rebbe explains us, where does it come from when chas v'shalom something is associated with neged Ratzon Hashem? How the person has to stay away from it. So chas v'shalom want to be a Rasha. Even once, when a person sins, he's called a Rasha, again based on these Gemaras. And here we're dealing a Beinani. Lei Rasha mamash chas v'shalom, never is he a Rasha. He should consider himself to the Beinani, which is the Kirasha, not the Rasha, but the Kirasha. And not to believe that the world which is standing around you and perhaps justifiably determining you as a tzaddik. because they see something so special. Which they see in their mind, in the way it perhaps appears to them, because they see your overall action. They perhaps see that I want to define you that your evil and your Yetzer Hara has been annulled in the face of the overall positive energy which you're exuding on a constant basis. Don't believe them, because you know that Zu Madrigas Tzaddik, this is the level of the Tzaddik and the multiple different levels of the tzaddik, which Alter Rebbe explained. We just mentioned it briefly, but again, Alter Rebbe elaborated on this in the chapter Yud, in the 10th chapter. And Arieh Beinov, in your eyes, you could be ki'ilu, as if muhusi vatzmusi shalara, the essence of the evil and the nefesh bahamis of the Yetzer Hara, b'tokvi v'gvirasi b'chol asmali, stands with its same strength and the same determination, the left side of the heart, kittul dasi, the way you were born. And it never changed, it never left you at all. Mu'umah means the slightest bit. And here the Alter Rebbe said, and had something very interesting, that not only didn't leave you, the Adarabah, and this is also for us important to know, not to again misguide ourselves, not only others, but misguide ourselves. Every day a person lives in Elam Hazeh, inevitably he is strengthening the energy of the Nefesh Bahamis. You had a good breakfast, you had a lavish breakfast, the Nefesh Bahamis is involved. You were involved in the eating and you were enjoying and appreciating the taste of every bite. That was chizuk to the Nefesh Bahamis. Now, to say if it's appropriate, not appropriate, everybody in his own level. There's certain people who are elevated themselves to the level that whatever they eat, it is completely insignificant to them, that their taste, because they're in a different plane. Spirituality is their strive, spirituality is their goal, total spirituality, true, emesdik, again, emesdik spirituality is their objective. So if a red apple, a yellow apple, or anything else, what is offered to them, they know that a person has to live. In order there should be the combination of body and soul, you have to eat. So they do what they need to do. In other words, they do what they need to do in order just to feed the body, because that's the way the person sustains himself. And in general, all their worldly affairs is because that's what turns the wheel of the life and sustenance of this particular body, the way they wish to create the Elam HaMaisa. But to them, it really makes no difference if it has this taste or that taste, because they're completely divested from Gashmias Elam Hazeh, which is in generally, again, the life of the tzaddik, in the different levels of the tzaddik. But again, in the farthest extreme, this is a tzaddik pretty much closer, or maybe the tzaddik, but Tevlei, classically, against the Gemara says, the Alter Rebbe brings this Gemara later, that when Hillel Azakin went to eat, he's going to do chesed imani aluva with the shameful poor, impoverished pauper. Because he looked at his body as a third party. Not to eat, it would be impossible, because a person has to eat in order that the neshama should stay within the body. On the other hand, he had no taiv achila, he had no interest, the taste of the foods, or whatever, or any involvement in Elam Hazeh, with something foreign to him, completely foreign to him. So when he went to eat, the Gemara says that he told his Talmidim he's going to do chesed imani aluva. He looked at his body as a third party. The Beinoni is not necessarily so. And again, in Beinoni also there's different levels, but on the average, when a person eats, as an example, he's involved in a pleasurable meal, or a meal that he derives pleasure from, he's mechazik, he's strengthened his nefesh bahamis, his animal soul, which looks for the taste and looks for the animalistic pleasure and dimension of this experience of eating. And Alter Rebbe said, when he's eating or drinking any other world affair, any involvement in Elam Hazeh, in Tanugi Elam Hazeh, worldly affairs and pleasures, this is mechazik the nefesh bahamis. So again, if he's honest, which is again, you see over here the important base of all our Vedas Hashem, the union of emes, to be true and to know where we're holding and where we're not holding, namely in this context. I'm this big... No, you had a good breakfast, you enjoyed it, you're mechazik the nefesh bahamis. So here the Alter Rebbe says, not only, this is what the Alter Rebbe adds, not only it never budged, as we mentioned before, adarabah, quite on the contrary, nischazik yeser, became stronger, the hemshech hazman, in the duration of the extension of time, which Hashem gives every single yid la'arichas yameh v'shanim teva, certainly with long life and the ability to live, and it's a bracha to live, because every day a person finds himself in this world, he's able to do Torah mitzvahs which he cannot do, namely mitzvahs which you can't do in any other world and state. So the person in the duration of the time, and the extension of the time, which he uses animal soul, which is looking for the taste buds or the pleasure. Harbe is harbe. A breakfast today, Monday, a breakfast Tuesday, a breakfast Thursday, and so on and so forth. And it's a lunch, and therefore the lashon is harbe. By eating and drinking, now the other engaging in worldly affairs. So this pleasure of achilush siyah sharinyan elam haza in strength and intensifies the strength of the nefesh bahamis. Did he get rid of it? Call himself a tzaddik? Even he never did an avera. And he's someone who's like a yaver. He's somebody who never will do an avera. But from him to a tzaddik, it's as distant as east from west, like the expression is. Because the nefesh bahamis is completely intact, and adrab, as we say, that it was strengthened with his involvement in yoni elam haz and the pleasures and realities of elam haz. So he is certainly kirosha. Chas v'shalom, not a rosha, but kirosha he is. So afilu koleim l'ch tzaddikai, and it is a very special person. But you know that you have that same struggle. And not only have that same struggle, the struggle could even increase at certain times. Have a great night. To leave on a positive note, why should we leave on the struggle? In other words, but in the end of the day, to leave it on the positive note, that the Rosh Mamash, that we have the ability not only to 80% or 90% of the time to overcome these missiles which are coming in from the enemy, from these signals which are coming from the nefesh bahamis, or the Yetzer Hara, but we have the ability to be like Rosh Mamash, in other words, never to be a Rosh, not even once. The Eibishter gave the Yid the ability in every circumstance that he encounters, in every challenge that he encounters, he has the ability to override 100%. And if the circumstance is more difficult, immediately, because again Hashem gave the Yid Bchira Chavshis, freedom of choice. And freedom of choice means there's always a balance. If the circumstance demands more determination and energy of the Nefesh Elikis, the Eibishter will, once we make the right decision, again, Mishtei Yadai, not to accept something which is inappropriate, and again to place the adequate determination in our Avodas Hashem when it comes to mitzvahs, say learning Torah, davening, doing mitzvahs. Koroi, the way it's appropriate, or the Gemara says, like we're supposed to. So then Hashem will definitely be Yamili Minevi and Lishim Meshifti Nafshi to assist us. It's our choice, but He will assist us with the adequate energy we need to overcome these strong temptations of the Yetzer Hara. Again, in Leis Sasa and in Mitzvah Say, to be laid back, not to do Ratzon Hashem, but we have the ability to be 100% successful.